It's been a much quieter morning this morning on the sixth day of the taxi strike by Santaco here in the Western Cape. We've seen over the past few days scenes of absolute chaos, buses set alight and torched, as well as sporadic incidents of stone throwing and looting. Now at the moment I'm standing at Mitchell's Plain. Of course behind me you'll see the Mitchell's Plain My City interchange, and I'm joined now by Cape Town Mayor Geordin Hill-Lewis. Mayor, very warm good morning to you. Mayor, driving into Mitchell's Plain this morning, we did not see the chaos we've seen yesterday, specifically at Borges Quarry on the N2. Also, everything seems to be a little, shall we say, more calm today. Do you attribute this to the interdict that was granted by the High Court?
Good morning to you. I think the interdict has certainly helped. I don't think it has been decisive. I also attribute it to the huge presence from both SABC and our city law enforcement, traffic services and Metro Police across the entire city, but particularly hotspots like the N2. And so far we've had a very peaceful and quiet and normal morning. And fortunately our buses, our City of Cape Town, My City buses and our Golden Arrow buses are really starting to operate much more regularly again. They are being escorted by city law enforcement, and that's very important that we protect commuters who want to get around the city and get to work.
Mayor, there's been a meeting last night with the National Transport Minister meeting Santaco, as well as your provincial colleagues, Ricardo McKenzie, the Minister of Mobility here in the Western Cape, talks to end the strike and also to address the grievances of Santaco. The city was not involved in that meeting.
We were not there, no. We've made it clear that we are not attending any further discussions with Santaco until such time as all disruption stops in the city. We've had a peaceful morning today, so hopefully if this continues for a reasonable period of time, then we might be able to see our way clear to discuss and meet them again. But until that time, until there is peace and quiet on our roads, until commuters are protected, until they can get around the city safely, we will not be discussing anything with Santaco under conditions of violence and intimidation.
Mayor, we've also learned that the National Women's Day event, due to have been presided over or addressed by the President of the country, due to have taken place in Khayelitsha, is no longer taking place there tomorrow as the country marks Women's Day, due to the volatile situation. Your comments and thoughts around that?
I think that's the good decision by the presidency, to be honest, because I think the taxi industry was looking for an opportunity to disrupt that event. That's certainly the intel that we had, to make a point on a national platform and to inconvenience the president. So I think it's best to just starve them of that opportunity and say we are not going to engage with people who negotiate on the basis of violence and disruption. We will simply move the event, and so we're perfectly happy with that decision. We think it's probably the wise decision in the circumstance.
Do you anticipate, Mayor, in terms of tomorrow's deadline? I mean, the taxi strike was called until Wednesday. Does this mean that operations should return to normal come tomorrow?
We're not exactly sure what they mean by Wednesday. Does that include Wednesday? It's a public holiday tomorrow anyway, so there wouldn't be a great deal of public transport. But even if it persists through tomorrow, it should definitely end tomorrow night, and taxis should be back at work on Thursday. Of course, it's up to them as to whether they want to abide by the timeline they've set, or whether they want to extend it. We sincerely hope that they will not extend it, that they will go back to work, and then we can continue constructive discussions about some of their grievances. But we cannot continue discussions on the basis that we currently have with violence and intimidation in the city. But at the moment, and the reason I'm here in Mitchell's Plain this morning is to check that we are looking after commuters and protecting commuters as much as possible by escorting our buses, by making sure that people can use the town centre and other public transport hubs safely.
Has there been an estimate of the damage over the past few days of the violence that accompanied the strike?
You know, very sadly, there's lots of private businesses who have lost vehicles. I think we now have 11 or 12 vehicles that have been burnt out, notwithstanding My City, Golden Arrow buses rather, that have also had a few of their buses burnt out. The city has, I think, lost 4 vehicles to firebombing. And yesterday there were a few sporadic incidents of looting of liquor stores in Philippi. very small, and fortunately they were got under control pretty quickly. But there's stores that have lost a lot of money, and in fact, very late last night we had a City of Cape Town health clinic in Site C in Khayelitsha that was vandalized by a taxi mob. Now you ask yourself, who are the people who are going to suffer the most when that clinic is closed for the next few weeks as we do repairs? Fortunately, the damage was not too large. Maybe it'll be open again next week or in 2 weeks' time. But truly, it is disgusting to think that the actions of violent taxi thugs are placing elderly ladies in Khayelitsha, sickly people who need access to doctors and nurses and pharmacies, placing them most at risk. And again, I say, that is why we are not going to negotiate with people on that basis. Instead, we are going to focus on protecting commuters, as we are doing here today.
Mayor Geordin Hill-Lewis, thank you very much for your time this morning. Of course, talking to us here at the My City bus station in Mitchell's Plain. Also just behind us, as you'll see, Mayor, having referred to the escorts that the My City buses, of course, are being escorted to make sure that passengers as well as the infrastructure is protected. Of course, this morning, a much calmer situation in Cape Town on all the major routes. I know that earlier on, the MACO member for Safety and Security, JP Smith, had posted on his Facebook page that there were some sporadic incidents in the areas of Masiphumelele where residents were prevented from leaving for work, and also isolated stone throwing incidents recorded at Dunoon, that of course along the N7. But at this point in time, a much quieter day as the taxi strike enters its 6th day.